As the village crowns Jenny queen, an ancient curse stirs within her, causing her body to grow uncontrollably. Desperate for answers, she embarks on a perilous journey into the forbidden forest to find a mysterious jewel that could break the curse. Battling shadows and her own fear, Jenny's fate hangs in the balance as a forgotten queen's spirit rises to claim her. Will she break free or be lost forever? Jenny lived in the small village of Nuba, where every year, the great festival brought life to every corner of the village. This festival was not just a celebration, but a time for everyone to honor the ancestors, sing, and dance under the stars. A girl was chosen each year to be the village queen, crowned to lead the ceremonies. This year, Jenny's name was called. She stood, her heart racing. Unlike the other girls, Jenny was different. She was much larger, and the children often teased her for her size. But this moment felt like her chance to be accepted, to stand tall in front of everyone. The village elders placed a beautiful golden crown on her head, a crown heavy with jewels that sparkled under the sunlight. The moment it rested on her hair, Jenny felt a sudden chill run down her spine. The ground beneath her feet trembled ever so slightly, but no one else seemed to notice. She smiled through her fear, hiding it behind her bright eyes as everyone around her cheered and danced. But deep down, Jenny felt something had changed. Something strange was happening, but she couldn't yet understand what it was. Later that evening, after the excitement of the festival had faded, Jenny's unease grew stronger. Her body began to feel different, heavier, as though it was expanding in a way that made no sense. When she looked down at her hands, they were larger than they had been just hours before. Panic seized her. What was happening to her? She needed answers, and fast. She ran to the home of the village healer, Nana Efua, an old woman with kind eyes who always knew what to do. Jenny explained what she was feeling, her voice trembling as she spoke. Nana Efua listened carefully and placed a hand on her forehead. "It's just the excitement of the festival, child," she said gently. "You're tired, and your mind is playing tricks on you." But Jenny knew it wasn't just her mind. The next morning, she woke to find her entire body had grown even larger. She was now twice the size she had been, and it was impossible to hide it from the rest of the village. When she stepped outside, the villagers stared. Whispers followed her wherever she went, like a dark cloud hovering over her. Some said she had been cursed. Others believed she had angered the spirits of the ancestors. Jenny's heart ached with confusion and fear. She didn't understand what was happening to her, but she couldn't let it go on like this. She returned to Nana Efua, hoping the old woman might have answers now. Nana Efua, however, looked more worried than ever. "There's an old tale," she began slowly, her voice filled with hesitation, "of a queen who once ruled this village. She, too, wore the crown. But it carried a curse, and she grew larger and larger until she vanished into the world of shadows. Some say it was a punishment from the spirits. Others say jealousy drove them to curse her." Jenny shivered at the thought. Could it be true? Was she cursed like the forgotten queen? Was she destined to disappear like the woman in the story? She couldn't let that happen. Determined to find answers, Jenny began asking the village elders about the queen, but no one seemed to know much. It was as if the story had been erased from the village's memory, left to fade away with time. That night, sleep eluded her. The fear of what was happening gnawed at her, and finally, she made a decision. She would visit the village shrine, where the spirits of the ancestors were honored. She knelt before the small, flickering candles and whispered a prayer, her heart filled with desperation. The air in the shrine grew colder, and the flames flickered. A soft voice, like the wind, whispered from the shadows. "You seek the truth, don't you?" the voice asked, sending a chill down Jenny's spine. Her breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I am the spirit of the forgotten queen," the voice replied, echoing softly. "I was once like you, chosen to wear the crown. But the crown carries a terrible curse. It was placed upon me by those who feared my power. They made me grow, until I was too large to stay in this world." Jenny felt her heart pound in her chest. The spirit's words filled her with dread. "Is there any way to stop it?" she asked, her voice shaking. "There is a way," the spirit whispered. "But it is not easy. You must find the hidden jewel of the ancestors, buried deep in the forbidden forest. Only that jewel can break the curse." The forbidden forest was a place no one dared to enter. It was said to be filled with danger, where those who ventured inside never returned. But Jenny had no choice. She couldn't let the curse consume her like it had the forgotten queen. The next morning, she gathered her courage and set off on her journey. As she entered the forbidden forest, a thick, eerie fog hung in the air. The trees twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like claws. The path was narrow, and every step felt like a challenge. Strange noises echoed around her, whispers, rustling leaves, the snapping of twigs. She could feel eyes watching her, though no one was there. Each step forward made her heart race faster. Hours passed, and just when she thought she was lost, Jenny came upon an ancient tree, larger than any she had ever seen. At the base of the tree was a hollow entrance, carved with strange, glowing symbols. Her instincts told her this was the place. Inside the hollow, a hidden cave awaited, dimly lit by the glow of the green moss that clung to the walls. At the center of the cave stood a pedestal, and resting atop it was the jewel. It was a bright green stone, shimmering like the eyes of a wild animal. But just as she reached for it, the shadows in the cave began to move. Dark figures emerged from the corners, their eyes glowing red, their voices a haunting whisper. "You will never leave," they hissed in unison. Jenny's heart pounded in her chest. She snatched the jewel, but the figures surrounded her. Panic surged through her. She tried to push past them, but their cold, dark hands reached out to grab her. Just as one of them touched her arm, Jenny raised the jewel, and a brilliant light burst forth from it, blinding the shadows. They recoiled, hissing in pain, and Jenny took her chance. She dashed out of the cave just as it began to collapse behind her, trapping the shadows inside. But the curse wasn't broken yet. Jenny could feel her body growing larger with every passing moment. She stumbled through the forest, the weight of her body making it harder to move. The sky darkened, and a fierce wind began to blow. Thunder rumbled overhead, and lightning flashed, illuminating the twisted trees around her. It was as if the spirits of the forest were angry, trying to stop her from leaving. When she finally reached the village, Jenny was exhausted, her body now so large that it took every ounce of strength to keep moving. The villagers gasped in horror as they saw her approaching, but Jenny held up the jewel. "This is the key," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "The key to breaking the curse." The villagers gathered around her, unsure of what to do. But then Nana Efua stepped forward, her eyes filled with determination. "We must help her," she said. The villagers formed a circle around Jenny, their voices rising in a chant, calling upon the spirits of the ancestors to aid them. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air grew colder. The wind howled louder, and the sky above seemed to crack open with thunder. But still, the villagers chanted, their voices growing stronger with each word. Jenny felt the curse lift, her body slowly returning to its normal size. But just as she thought it was over, the ground split open, and from the depths emerged the monstrous spirit of the forgotten queen. Her eyes burned with fury, and her voice echoed like thunder across the village. "You will never be free," she roared, her form towering over the villagers. Fear gripped the hearts of those around Jenny, but she stood firm. She knew what she had to do. With the last of her strength, she raised the jewel high above her head. A beam of light shot out, striking the queen. The queen screamed in agony as her twisted form began to flicker and fade. The spirits of the ancestors appeared, surrounding the queen and pulling her back into the ground from which she had risen. With one final piercing scream, the queen vanished into the earth, never to be seen again. The storm cleared, and the village was left in silence. Jenny stood in the middle of the circle, the jewel still glowing faintly in her hands. The curse was broken, and she was free. From that day forward, Jenny was no longer the girl who was different. She was the hero who had saved her village from the curse of the forgotten queen. Each year during the great festival, the villagers honored her bravery, telling the story of how Jenny had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. They remembered her not for her size, but for the strength and courage that had saved them all. The crown she had worn was no longer a symbol of fear, but one of hope and resilience.